Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. Chinese shares poised to enter a bull market as authorities roll out fresh property easing steps as part of a stimulus barrage. Iron ore rallies. Tensions in the Middle East escalate after the killing of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, with Israeli jets targeting Yemen's Houthi rebels, bombing a seaport and power stations. And Austria's far-right Freedom Party wins the most votes in a national election for the first time. But the country's traditional parties move to keep it from power. Well, happy Monday, everyone, as we check in on European futures, currently pointing up, just shy of 0.1%. The session in Asia has been absolutely fascinating. We'll break that down for you in the next couple of seconds. FTSE 100 futures currently looking lower, just by 0.1%, which is interesting given the rally that we're seeing in iron ore and copper. So we keep an eye on basic resources and the miners. S&P futures currently flat. Nasdaq futures still holding above that 20,000 level pretty comfortably, but down, pointing lower by 0.1%. The inflation data out of the US on Friday, pretty benign. Top line in terms of PCE, that core gauge, the key gauge for the Fed, coming in at 0.1%. So pretty relaxed, the markets around the pricing, still expecting close to 70 basis points of additional cuts from the Fed as the inflation picture looks much closer to that 2% target. Jobless claims later this week, and then, of course, non-farm payrolls on Friday. Let's flip the board and look cross-asset then. Currently, not a lot of movement across your treasury markets. In terms of currencies, you're looking at 111 on euro-dollar on the single currency. Brent, $72, up 0.5%. The Middle East story, of course, the tensions there remain in focus. Iron ore coming through with a punchy rally, gaining almost 10%. Iron ore lifted up 9.7% at 112 right now for that core input, of course, into the steel-making picture on that expectation of further demand from the Chinese markets. Talking of China, let's flip the board and have a look at the gains coming through. You have a very and starkly divergent picture right now across Asia. Japan hammered, China soaring. Currently across the CSI 300, gains of almost 7%. The MSCI Asia Pacific, so the index for the region, down 0.5%, dragged lower by South Korea, but more prominently Japan, with the Nikkei tumbling. Look at that, almost 5%. The market's wrong-footed by the new leader of the LDP. Likely, of course, the next Prime Minister with a slightly hawkish tilt when it comes to thinking about the BOJ. Now, back to the China story with the details. While China property shares are rallying, and you're seeing that predominantly right now and pretty strongly as well. Japanese markets, as we mentioned, tumbling as investors getting caught out in terms of their bets around Shigeru Ishiba and that surprise victory, of course, in the ruling party's leadership race. Let's get more in terms of how the market's adjusting this morning at the start of this week with Bloomberg MLive strategist Mary Nicola. Mary, talk to us then about the divergence that we're seeing within these markets. It's pretty remarkable. I can't remember a last time we saw a picture like the one we see right now, Japan and China.
Yeah, what a contrast, right? Especially considering how much we've been writing about the divergence, because China has been the one that's been on the back foot and Japan has been roaring ahead. But the tables have really turned now, and it's really, there's just been this spectacular rally in China equities, largely, of course, driven by the stimulus and the constant news flow that is coming from policymakers in support of the Chinese economy, which is going to be absolutely critical. So, for example, we had PMIs. The PMIs just confirmed from China that stimulus was required. And of course, a lot of the data isn't going to come through, that we're going to see an improvement for some time. So you're going to see the impact from investors really coming through still and looking for that rally in China equities. But also, we have to remember how much investors were underweight China. So you're seeing the shift. And so a lot of the indices in Asia that did really well and were some of the top performers over the last year are now suffering a setback because investors now have to be covering their shorts and thinking also about the rotation and the longer term implications for China into year end.
Okay, so short covering coming through as well for these markets. That's certainly flowing into some of the moves today. Mary, just reflect briefly on the inflation data we got out of the US and how that positions us. Well, we've got more on the data front when it comes to jobless claims later this week and, of course, non-farm payrolls. What is our view now? What do we know about the moves around inflation, and to what extent the Fed does have this kind of under control at this point?
Yeah, it looks like what inflation is telling us is that it's moving in the right direction. The Fed could be a lot more confident about moving ahead with easing. But still, it comes down, if there's going to be aggressive easing, it's going to come down to the labor market. But unfortunately, cracks in the labor market are going to indicate and spook some concerns about a recession. And so far, the activity data has been really positive, showing a robust economy, showing that we're headed for a soft landing. So the last thing we want to see is more cracks in the labor market or unemployment rising. That would really take a turn and a tumble on equity markets and on sentiment overall. But at least for now, we know that the inflation picture does suggest that easing is going to continue.
OK, Bloomberg MLive strategist Mary Nicola, thank you very much indeed, setting us up for what to look out for as well later this week as we lead up to those non-farm payroll data on Friday. Now, let's get back to the China story in more granular detail and bring in Bloomberg's John Liu, who leads our greater China coverage from Beijing. John, more measures then. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. More measures in terms of what is happening in terms of the first-tier cities of Shenzhen, Shanghai, Guangzhou as well, in terms of easing some of these restrictions on property purchases. John, what are the details and to what extent is that fueling the moves that we're seeing in Chinese markets this morning?
So property has been the big question here in China. It's the reason the economy has been doing so poorly. There were lots of restrictions on how many homes could people buy and who could buy homes in cities, the big mega cities in China, your Shanghai's, Shenzhen's, Guangzhou's, and Beijing's. And so we have had Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Shanghai all dramatically, to a great extent, reduce those restrictions. Guangzhou actually took away all of the restrictions on home purchases. So anyone can buy homes, as many as they can afford. We have not gotten those measures from Beijing yet, but there are some expectations that those will come. That's been a huge boon for the market. The market expects that now, after we had the Politburo meeting last week in which they said they wanted to take action to stop the decline in the housing market, there is an expectation now that the government has switched its sort of mode of operation and is now looking for ways to support this market. And so that is partly why the market is doing so well today.
John, how would you characterize the stimulus that we've got on the monetary policy front, the fiscal front, over the last week or so from China? And what are you and the team looking for in the days and weeks ahead?
I think certainly what the stimulus we've gotten over the last week has changed the perception. I think before last week, almost everybody was sort of bearish on China. After that stimulus, you've seen a lot of people switch their opinions, and that's why I think the stock market is doing what it's doing. Whether or not people will continue to hold a relatively bullish view on future economic growth here in China, that will depend on what the data looks like for October, for the fourth quarter. It will also depend on earnings for companies. If we start seeing the stimulus flow through in terms of better profit, better pricing power for corporates, that will be a sustainable story. This right now is just a lot of excitement.
OK, yes, certainly. And the excitement is pretty pronounced, isn't it? Bloomberg's John Liu, who leads our greater China coverage from Beijing. Thank you for the context. Let's switch focus right now to the geopolitics and developments, of course, in the Middle East. Israeli strikes have hit Houthi targets in Yemen following the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Let's bring in our Horizons Middle East and Africa anchor, Jumana Basetchi. Jumana, how significant is the killing of Nasrallah for Lebanon and the region?
Yeah, well, it's one of those historic weekends in the Middle East. It's difficult to overstate what Hassan Nasrallah represented, not just to Lebanese politics, but to regional politics as well. He has been a figurehead, a key political voice for over 4 decades now. He has led Hezbollah since 1992. And over the course of his time at the helm, he transitioned Hezbollah away from being a pure militia into a significant military force and even a political and social force within Lebanon as well, creeping into the states. And what many of his detractors within Lebanon will say is that it is the state capture that Hezbollah were responsible for that led many to believe that he was not a good influence, not only on Lebanon, but on regional politics as well, because he had succeeded at taking some of Lebanon's sovereignty away from it and putting Lebanon under this so-called axis of resistance and under the sphere of Iran. Now, many of his supporters view him as someone who was a voice of so-called resistance to Israel's incursions into Lebanon over the years, but also as someone who spearheaded reconciliation amongst all of the members of the axis of resistance, including reconciliation efforts between Hamas and Iran many years before October 7 happened, and the recent reconciliation of Houthis to Iran as well. So he was a key figurehead even from Iran's perspective too, and even from Israel's standpoint. The operation to take out Hassan Nasrallah on Friday was called Operation New Order. That is a quote, and that is really underscoring the fact that from Israel's perspective, Hassan Nasrallah was the central point to this axis of resistance, and that taking him out could usher in a new era. Now, whether or not that new era comes or is being heralded is a big question for the region. The airstrikes have continued over the course of the weekend. The number of deaths continues to rise. Lebanese health ministry put it at 1,000. But it seems as though appetite to continue with these airstrikes doesn't appear to be fading, and therefore opening up questions to a potential diplomatic resolution here, which again remains elusive.
Yeah, and we have a reminder of the multi-front nature of this conflict, with attacks continuing, of course, or at least long-range attacks on some Houthi targets as well by Israel. Hamas, of course, continuing to be battled in Gaza, and the conflict, of course, with Hezbollah continuing, as you've outlined for us. Jumana, what is your sense as to whether or not this moment opens the door for a diplomatic solution or pushes it further down the line?
Yeah, what Lebanese people are saying is that this is the time for the Lebanese state to step up. And as I was just saying before, a significant amount of state capture had been undertaken by Hezbollah. The Lebanese prime minister, who, by the way, has been very silent over the course of the last 10 days, finally spoke on Saturday. And he said he is calling for a ceasefire. And the Lebanese government, this is the caretaker government, have a desire to implement this so-called Resolution 1701. This was a resolution that was put forward by the UN after the 2006 Israel-Lebanon war, which stipulated that Hezbollah move away from the border and lay down their arms. So it is perhaps significant, at least, that the Lebanon commentary or messaging to the rest of the world is that they're willing to undertake discussions regarding 1701. Whether or not Hezbollah themselves or what remains of Hezbollah would adhere to it is the other question here. But then you also heard from US President Biden as well, saying that ultimately the U.S. will continue to support Israel's right to self-defense, but that it is time for a ceasefire, not just in Lebanon, but in Gaza as well. And so there is still a direct, explicit linkage between what is happening in Gaza and the events that will unfold in Lebanon in the coming days.
OK, Horizons Middle East and Africa anchor Jumana Basechi. OK, here's what else to be thinking about this week then. On Tuesday, it is China's Golden Week. That starts. It's a big week, of course, in terms of retail sales, consumer travel. So all of those data points will be filtering through after the holiday. But it's a gauge, again, on the health of a consumer that is feeling increasingly embattled. And that, of course, before all the stimulus efforts that came through last week. On Tuesday as well, here, closer to home, the French Prime Minister will be laying out a policy speech. New Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, will be detailing the policy priorities for him and the team. So we will bring you the details on that. And looking further ahead to the week, at the end of the week, Friday, it is the US jobs report. Non-farm payrolls coming through, with the surveys pointing in a number of around 146,000 is the expected number. And of course, an important data point when you are factoring in the next moves for this Federal Reserve. You can get a roundup of the stories you need to know to get your day going in today's edition of Daybreak. Terminal subscribers can go to DAYB Go on the terminal. Coming up, why the far right in Austria is unlikely to play any role in the new government. That's despite winning an historic election victory. We'll have the details next. This is Bloomberg.
And frankly speaking, I haven't spoken to anybody here, even though you have a big financial district also in New York, about selling or buying of shares from the Commerzbank, because the world is burning at the moment, and therefore the job of a foreign minister is to try to do everything that the fire is not reaching the whole world.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock speaking to Bloomberg there. Now, Austria's far-right Freedom Party won the most votes in a general election and vowed to start coalition talks. But traditional political powers, well, they are pledging to block the party from forming a government in Austria. Let's get the details with Bloomberg's Oliver Crook, who's on the ground for us in Berlin, has been monitoring this for us. Talk us through the results then, Ollie.
Yeah, Tom, so listen, the Freedom Party, it's their best outcome so far in their history, 29% of the vote, as you outlined there. This was really at the expense of the sort of center-right, the Conservatives and the Green parties, which is a phenomenon we've seen occur, at least with the Greens across Europe, potentially, certainly in Germany and in Austria. And really for the leader of this party, Herbert Kickl, this is going to be a moment where he's going to say, we are the biggest party in Austria. It's time to enter coalition talks to take us into power. And that is going to be a very one-sided conversation, because the rest of the political establishment within Austria has basically vowed not to work with him. So not only is he not expected to lead the next government, he's expected to play no part in the next government. And this is a party that has run in a sort of anti-immigration platform on the so-called Fortress Austria, this idea of really closing down the borders, and also at the same time being sort of opposed to sanctions within Russia. What that then leaves, Tom, is a situation where you have coalition building with parties that are much weaker. There are enough votes for the center-right and the center-left to build a government. It often takes a very long time for governments to form in Austria, up to 2 months. But the situation that it leaves is potentially a weaker government that's actually ruling over, while at the same time, on the sidelines, the most popular party within Austria giving its sort of policy proposals, which is really not an ideal dynamic for these mainstream parties who might actually want to try to get something done and face a lot of sort of opposition from a party that can rightly say they are the most popular party within Austria.
And Ollie, we see echoes right now in Austria of the political changes that we've seen across France and Germany as well. What is the picture? What does this tell us about the broader shifts, political shifts at work right now across Europe?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Tom. And you have the same phenomenon at play both in Germany and in France, where you have in France this idea of le barrage, which is the sort of teaming up of all these political parties to, at any cost, basically prevent the far right from coming into government. The cost of that, Tom, is being an effective government, as we have been learning in France, where we're only now getting a prime minister to come into power. And already it looks very, very shaky. Similar phenomenon here in Germany, where you have all of the mainstream parties have vowed to block the AfD at the local level. But, Tom, we have an idea of what really awkward coalitions look like in Germany, because we've got one right now, and it's very difficult for these three parties to work together to get things done. What it leaves is a much weaker government. And putting this in the broader context, Tom, we have a new European Commission, right? Ursula von der Leyen wants there to be a more integrated Europe. It says that from the Mario Draghi report that basically the only way that Europe survives is if it begins to act more like a single country rather than a collection of different countries. That becomes a lot harder when, one, you have weaker governments that don't enjoy the sort of full support of their population to actually get things done, and when the reason that they are weak is because you have much more nationalist, anti-establishment, and frankly Eurosceptic parties doing so from the sidelines, it's going to make it very difficult to get things done here in Europe.
OK, Bloomberg's Oliver Crook on the Austrian political results and the broader read across in terms of how these political lines are being redrawn across Europe. Ollie, thank you very much indeed. Now, Croatia's Prime Minister has called for an orderly US presidential election, saying the last vote in 2020 weakened American democracy. Andrej Plenković has been speaking to Bloomberg's Vonnie Quinn.
It is up to the American people to decide. What is important that the America walks out of the elections in November by strengthening American democracy, because everybody looks up at what happens in the United States. And last time we felt that the United States democracy was weakened rather than strengthened. So we very much expect an orderly and democratic process and smooth transition, whatever the transition will be, upon the decision of the American people.
Domestically, for you, you were in your third term. It was a little bit more of a difficult election this time around. In spite of the fact that you brought Croatia into the EU, also the Euro area, so it's now a Euro user, and the Schengen zone, so visa-free travel all around Europe. Were you a little disappointed that all those successes didn't lead to an outright victory in the sense that you've had to make a coalition with the far-right homeland movement?
Well, we always had a coalition both in first, the second and the third mandate, but what we did is that we converged on the main points of our government program, and the government program is predominantly the program of my party that I'm the president of, Croatian Democratic Union. I think that the Croatian citizens gave us confidence for the third time. Maybe it could have been one mandate more or less, but when I look from a, let's say, a larger perspective, the fact that we have regained confidence in such global and regional, meaning European, but also national circumstances, with consequences of COVID, with two devastating earthquakes, with the ramifications of the energy crisis due to the Russian aggression against Ukraine, inflationary pressures, we have, despite that, managed to join the Eurozone, the Schengen area, get rid of visas with the United States, enter the global entry program, European Stability Mechanism, on the verge of joining the OECD, and most of all, increase GDP. In the last 3 years, the average GDP growth in Croatia was 7.6%, only 2 EU member states having a larger, or I would say higher percentage. And also, of course, which is very important for us, since we are at Bloomberg for the first time in our history recently, 2 out of 3 credit agencies put us into the A investment credit rating, which I think is a recognition of the reform process, good absorption of the EU funds investments, and I think that Croatia is on the right path, especially being reflected on the salaries and pensions of our citizens.
Well, you are referring to the S&P and Fitch upgrades
Exactly.
to A-, the highest in your history, as you've said. Are you planning to use those upgrades in the primary markets, or are your needs already met?
Our needs in terms of refinancing, that's our continually, I would say, refreshed. But what is happening now, we are of course having the possibility to have lower interest rates. There are immediate effects on our banking sector, in the sector of loans for our citizens, and the entire economic perception of Croatia having been fully with our 2 feet in the heart of the European Union, with a very good reputational assessment by the credit rating agencies, is a boost for Croatian economy. Most of the business sector that I've been in touch with are really excited with this development, and it's helping them to work on their productivity, it's helping them to work on their exports and contribute to the Croatia's economy.
Okay, the Croatian Prime Minister speaking to Bloomberg there. Coming up, I'm going to be joined by the CEO of HIVE Digital Technologies to discuss the energy demands of AI data centers and the future for Bitcoin. Stay with us for that conversation. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back now to a major corporate story that continues to bring headlines for us, with a focus, of course, on the impacts on the German economy. Volkswagen has slashed its outlook for a second time in 3 months as the car maker squares off with unions on possible job cuts and plant closures. VW lowered its operating margin forecast to 5.6% from 7% back in July. Germany's 3 biggest car makers, VW, Mercedes and BMW, have all issued profit warnings this month due to slower Chinese sales and a rising competition in EVs. Talking of China, let's check back in on the markets in China. The superlatives are coming thick and fast. You are looking at the biggest 5-day rally ever on record for CSI 300, up currently 7.2%. Plenty more coming up. This is Bloomberg. Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. Chinese shares poised to enter a bull market as authorities roll out fresh property easing steps as part of a stimulus barrage. Iron ore rallies. Tensions in the Middle East escalate after the killing of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, with Israeli jets targeting Yemen's Houthi rebels, bombing a seaport and power stations. And Austria's far-right Freedom Party wins the most votes in a national election for the first time, but the country's traditional parties move to keep it from power. Checking in on your markets right now. European markets posted record gains by the end of the close on Friday. Here's the picture as we weigh up what is transpiring in China. The Asian market rally, the Chinese market rally, the superlatives coming thick and fast. This is a turbocharged Chinese market. It is red hot. There is no let up in the buying. We are looking at the longest, most pronounced rally, the biggest rally over a 5-day period for the CSI 300 ever. That is how things are set right now. The filter across to European futures, a little bit more muted, though. We'll look at what happens with the miners and basic resources, given that incredible run-up in iron ore prices just in the session today. European futures pointing to modest gains of 0.1%. But again, on the back of a record, fresh record that was notched by European stocks on Friday. FTSE 100 futures currently pointing down by 0.1%. We'll see how the car market and auto market adjusts as well to another downgrade from Volkswagen, the second in just 3 months. S&P futures currently flat. Nasdaq futures pointing to losses of 0.1%. Let's look cross-asset. Flip the board then. The Japan story is also there, so we could be checking on the Japanese yen because the Nikkei is being crushed in the session. Markets there wrong-footed. Traders around the new leader of the LDP and expectations there could be a more hawkish tilt there. The US 10-year currently at 3.75. The inflation data on Friday reinforcing for many the view that the Fed does have space to go further with deeper cuts, given that inflation seems to be well on track to that 2% target. Euro-dollar at 1.11, 72 on Brent, up 1% in the session on those Middle East tensions. Iron ore at 112, a soaring rally in prices for that key commodity around steelmaking, up almost 10% in the session alone. Let's go back to the Middle East now and the developments there. The killing then of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in an airstrike on southern Beirut on Friday has dealt a major blow to that group and its sponsor, Iran. Let's bring in our Horizons Middle East and Africa anchor, Jumana Pasecci, for the latest. Jumana, how significant then is the killing of Nasrallah for Lebanon and the region, and where does it leave the region in the days and hours ahead?
Well, I'm reminded of that Lenin quote, there are decades when nothing happens and there are weeks when decades happen. That's precisely what has occurred in Lebanon in the last couple of weeks. The killing of Hassan Nasrallah marks a significant turning point, not least because he was effectively the leader of the crown jewel, that is Hezbollah, of this axis of resistance that was sponsored by Iran. It is a huge blow to Iran's foreign policy. He is a figure who has loomed large over regional and Lebanese politics for the last 4 decades, responsible for turning Hezbollah from a militia group into a very powerful and influential military and political force within Lebanon. He also had very close ties to the Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, in addition to having close ties with other proxies around the region as well. He was responsible for the reconciliation of Hamas with Iran. He was very close to Syria as well, having aided Bashar al-Assad throughout the 2011 onwards uprising, and therefore a pivotal leader when it came to that axis of resistance. And even from Israel's perspective, it's noteworthy that Israel themselves called the operation to take him out Operation New Order, therefore underscoring from their perspective that this could potentially usher in a new era for the region. But there are still some lingering questions. The first is, how are Iran going to respond to this? Will they use it as a reason to exact revenge, seek retribution, or bide some time to help Hezbollah regroup again? And the second question is, what does Hezbollah themselves do from this point onwards? What does the Lebanese government do? We heard from the Lebanese Prime Minister over the weekend, and he was saying they do want to see a ceasefire. So still a lot of things up in the air. The next few days are going to be crucial.
OK, Jumana Pasecci, our Horizons and Middle East anchor with the latest out of the region. Jumana, thank you. Posing a number of questions that we can now put, I'm very pleased to say, to Jane Kinninmont, Middle East analyst, joining us for the analysis on this story. Jane, good morning. Thank you for joining us. How would you characterise the removal then of Hassan Nasrallah, of Hezbollah, the leader, and how that and where that leaves the region in the days and weeks ahead?
As Jumana says, it's extremely significant. Hezbollah is, of course, a much broader movement which has got deep roots in Lebanon, so it hasn't killed the movement. But as well as assassinating Nasrallah, Israel in recent weeks has managed to take out through assassinations virtually all of Hezbollah's senior military command, as well as assassinating further leaders from Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and from Hamas. So the movement, Hezbollah, is really in disarray, and it appears at the moment that it's struggling to respond militarily to Israel. It does have a significant arsenal, including long-range missiles that could go quite a long way into Israeli territory. But these are not really coming into play. That could be because the movement is preoccupied with trying to stem its losses, focus on appointing new leaders, and make sure that those new leaders are not vulnerable to similar assassinations. Meanwhile, the major issue of Iran, it's very early to judge, but the initial signals coming out of Iran are that they do not want to get involved directly in responding militarily to Israel to avenge the killing of Nasrallah. And Syria definitely doesn't, despite the fact that Nasrallah was a huge support to Bashar al-Assad in putting down his uprising. Syria is signalling that it wants to stay out of it. Essentially, most states in the region don't want to confront Israel because it's militarily strong, and of course it's backed by the world's biggest superpower.
So, Jane, is this an Iran that has been and has had its bluff called by Israel? And what do you think the calculations are, the factors are that Israel is weighing up as it thinks about its next move? Do we have clarity on what the game plan is for Israel?
Very good question. So there are definitely analysts judging that Iran's bluff has been called, and the fact that Iran and Hezbollah haven't responded much yet has really validated, in their minds at least, the views of hawks on Iran, from those in Israel to people like John Bolton, who have been saying Iran's been a paper tiger all along, and Biden was wrong to call for restraint. But it is very early days. And one of the worries is that this could encourage Iran to judge that pursuing a nuclear weapon is a good strategy for it. It has always seen Hezbollah as part of what it calls its deterrence network, and as a group that would be an insurance policy for it in the event of any Israeli attack on Iran. So they may be concluding that they need to find other forms of deterrence, such as nuclear deterrence. That's one of the simmering questions about the medium to long-term effects. As for Israel, I think right now they want to press their military advantage. The US election timetable clearly is a concern as well. Right now, it seems that they are not going to get much pressure from the US. Quite astonishing, actually, that in the past few days, just last week, the US was saying that it anticipated a ceasefire in Lebanon and thought Israel was on board. And just after US officials were saying this publicly, Israel assassinated the leader of the group that it was supposedly about to have a ceasefire with. So the US is looking quite exposed, but they have only responded by saying the killing of Nasrallah was a good thing and helps to avenge his many victims. So for now, Israel has a lot of room for maneuver, but they also will be aware that when a new US president comes in, whether that is a President Harris or a President Trump, they would very much like there not to be war still raging in the Middle East. So there's a space of a few weeks where Israel has this particular room for maneuver for military action, and it's therefore trying to move fast despite the mass displacement, deaths of civilians, and general misery that is taking place. Then there's the question of the Gaza ceasefire, which still doesn't seem to be moving. Overshadowed by all this news around Lebanon, last week, Arab countries at the UN talked of comprehensive regional peace if there was a two-state solution. The Saudi and Jordanian foreign ministers spoke, saying they want to make this kind of arrangement with Israel to stabilize the whole region for the longer term. But Israel was barely responding to that offer because it does not want to go down the route of a Palestinian state. And ultimately, that is the core recurring issue that keeps coming back, but just isn't being resolved.
OK, Middle East analyst Jane Kinninmont with the analysis there. And a reminder, of course, to keep an eye and continue to monitor what is unfolding in Gaza as well, of course, as Lebanon. Thank you very much indeed for a situation, for analysis and a touch point there on a situation that, of course, continues to evolve. Now, we are going to switch focus. I'm going to be speaking to the CEO of HIVE Digital Technologies about whether crypto will ever become mainstream and the future for generative AI. Stay with us for that conversation. It's coming up. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back. Now, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang sees nuclear as a key source to help power the increasing energy demands of data centers. Speaking exclusively with Bloomberg, Huang also discussed how his company is managing customer demands in China against growing chip export tensions with the US.
Nuclear is a wonderful way forward as one of the sources of energy, one of the sources of sustainable energy. It won't be the only one. We're going to need energy from all sources and balance the availability and the cost of energy, as well as the sustainability over time.
Export controls are a big topic as we go into the November election, particularly when it comes to competition with China. Is Nvidia on track to make a China-safe Blackwell chip?
We haven't announced our future products yet, but the first thing we have to do is comply with whatever policies and regulations that are being imposed, supported fully, and meanwhile do the best we can to compete in the markets that we serve. We have a lot of customers there that depend on us, and we'll do our best to support them.
Do you think the U.S. should back off on China trade sanctions? Do you think the restrictions are effective?
Well, we have to defer all of the policy making to the administration. They understand that the balancing national security versus the prosperity of American technology all over the world. We're exporting American technology, which is really terrific for the United States, that the world is built on on American standards. Nvidia is an American company, and our government and the administration would love to see us succeed. And so finding the right balance is very difficult to do, but they're doing a wonderful job. I'm
curious, have you been in touch with either of the campaigns to counsel them on this technology?
No, my focus is to build our company, and I trust that they're going to do the best thing for our country.
OK, that, of course, was the Nvidia CEO, Jensen Huang, speaking exclusively with Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall in Washington. Let's stick with the future of generative AI and its energy demands and bring in right now, speaking to us exclusively, Aydin Kilic, CEO at HIVE Digital Technologies, a company that very much started out in terms of providing the infrastructure for the digital ecosystem, the crypto ecosystem. Aydin, you're making a pivot right now. Talk to us about the pivot then from the mining of crypto to providing the infrastructure for the building of generative AI. Where are you in that pivot? What underpins it? And how sustained do you expect it to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually started this pivot well over a year ago. In fact, it was almost 2 years ago that something called the Ethereum merge occurred. And what this means is Ethereum, which is the second largest cryptocurrency, went from what we call a proof of work consensus mechanism, where people used to mine it, and that went to proof of stake. Why that's important is HIVE at one point was one of the world's largest Ethereum miners, with about 6% of the global network and over 120,000 GPUs in Sweden mining Ethereum. After the merge, we repurposed these GPUs that we had, which were AMD and Nvidia GPUs, and we started mining what were called altcoins to take ownership of Bitcoin. However, in the first quarter of 2023, we began our pivot towards AI. Now, in that period of time, about a year and a half ago, the focus on high performance computing, specifically with our Nvidia GPUs, because the Nvidia GPUs were a lot more powerful. They had more memory and compute capacity to allow for high performance computing, which is much more robust than simple crypto mining. And so as the AI boom took off, and we saw the advent of ChatGPT 3.5 and then ChatGPT 4, we started building our GPU clusters with stronger networking, storage, and overall compute capabilities to fuel the compute, the inference and training required for AI models. And so now we're at this horizon where NVIDIA is announcing Blackwell, and ChatGPT is consistently releasing new, more powerful models, and the world is tuned into this exciting new world of generative AI. And adoption is occurring slowly but surely at the enterprise level. And I think day to day, a lot of people are using accessible AI tools to fuel growth and creativity, which I think is phenomenal.
Aydin, are you seeing it paying off as well for your business? The stock is down about 28% year to date. Are investors underappreciating this shift that you're making? And are you putting in some orders for those Blackwell chips?
I think we are underappreciated now, but the stock being down 28% is really a macro reflection of Bitcoin price. Really, as a company that has a dual focus, we still are just under 1% of the global Bitcoin mining network, mining almost 4 Bitcoin a day. We have over 50,000 Bitcoin mining ASICs operating in Canada, Sweden, and Iceland. And by the way, we're a green energy focused data center company. HIVE is actually the first crypto mining company ever going public in September 2017. We're traded on the NASDAQ, the TSXV in Canada, as well as the Frankfurt Exchange here in Germany, where I'm in your studio this morning. So the share price is very much tied to Bitcoin. And by the way, we have 2,500 Bitcoin mined with green and clean energy on our balance sheet. So that's over $150 million of green and clean Bitcoin on our balance sheet. So that gives us a very compelling enterprise value when you just look at us within the sphere of Bitcoin mining. But moreover, we recently reported $10 million of annualized revenue from our AI business using our NVIDIA GPUs this most recent quarter, which was the period end June 30, 2024. So I think investors are starting to understand Bitcoin mining a little bit more, but they're still wrapping their head around the AI compute business. And as this is Bloomberg, for the investors out there, a really simple metric, the profit density of AI compute is anywhere from 10 to 20 times more profitable per kilowatt than Bitcoin mining. For example, right now,
No, Aydin, sorry, we're just running short of time. But it's a good metric. So I guess my question is, do you eventually move out of crypto mining altogether? And if you can, before we let you go, if you can give us a forecast on pricing for crypto, for Bitcoin, I should say, it's currently at 64,000. It's risen 50% year to date. What are you targeting in terms of pricing? And at what point how do you balance that mix in terms of generative AI provision versus the mining of crypto?
So they're two very different businesses. All I was going to say is that right now, Bitcoin mining will pay you about 10 cents a kilowatt hour out of your data centers, and AI will pay you about $2 a kilowatt hour. That's the 20 times of profit density. Now, GPU chips are a lot more capex per megawatt, but they're two different businesses. Bitcoin has implicit volatility, and we're in the wake of the halving event. So historically, 9 to 12 months after each halving event, which happens every 4 years, we see the golden bull market come. So whether it's early next year, or maybe even as late as next summer, I expect to see a bull market. Now, could Bitcoin be at 150,000, 200,000? I think that's not out of the question if you simply look at historical price performance of Bitcoin relative to its own previous highs. On the AI side of the business, AI operates out of tier 3 data centers, and we have both. We have crypto mines, which are rugged like a Ford F-150 truck, and our tier 3 data centers are refined with cooling, backup redundancy, and that is like a Ferrari or a Porsche. So it's two different business units. It's two different revenue streams. And the beauty of it is you have a lot more stable and fixed revenue in the AI business, which is an excellent complement to the implicit volatility of Bitcoin mining.
Okay, you've got the Ford, you've got the Ferrari. Aydin Kilic, CEO at HIVE Digital Technologies. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. There's plenty more coming up. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Yes, it is once again all about China. An 8% rally in the benchmark CSI 300 before they go off on that national holiday. It is a full-bore bull market right now in Chinese stocks. By the way, in terms of a 5-day period, the CSI 300 set for the biggest 5-day gain ever. The money continues to move in to Chinese equities. We have more of a breakdown in terms of what's happening across the Chinese market, but one of the ramifications as we flip the board is on iron ore and the demand there as well. Because, of course, what we heard over the weekend is that they are easing some of the constraints in major cities like Guangzhou, Shenzhen and Shanghai. Some of these cities have a population of 30 million. They're removing restrictions in a pretty comprehensive way. That ends then leading into expectations that there's going to be more demand for steel. And, of course, to make steel, you need that iron ore. So iron ore prices absolutely soaring so far in the session. The last time I checked, up about 11%. This is the context day. Today's turnover is the highest, in terms of the turnover, as you see here, the highest in 3 years when it comes to iron ore. So just keep that in mind as we look at basic resources and the opening of the mining stocks in about an hour's time. Let's flip the board and give you a preview of non-farm payrolls out of the US as well. That's the big data print. We get jobless claims on Thursday, then we get the NFPs on Friday, of course. We're looking for revisions. Keep an eye on revisions. That's the line from Bloomberg Economics. The survey sees a print of 146,000. Bloomberg Economics, though, sees a print of around 270,000 in September. They think, though, that will not derail the Fed because they say that the high-frequency data shows that there is actually less job shedding than in previous and in typical months. But again, they're also saying that non-farm payrolls often overstate by about 91,000 on average per month. So the view there coming through from Bloomberg Economics. Here's the big corporate story of the moment. It's a reminder, this came through on Friday. It's the second downgrade from Volkswagen in just 3 months. So cutting their forecasts around revenue, around profit and around deliveries. A reminder of the challenge on VW and the broader auto sector of Germany. Stay with us. The opening trade is next. This is Bloomberg.